I'm Lola.
And I'm Mamuna. Together, we have a combined 35 years of experience within the tech scene in North America and Europe.
We talk about the highs, the lows, the WTFs of navigating the technology industry and answer your questions about navigating tech careers.
This is Lost in Tech.
I have just had the most wonderful experience yesterday where a friend of my daughter's, their parent reached out to me and was like, hey, can we just hop on a video chat real quick with, our kids? My kid's been asking about your kid and, we're in separate schools now and they want to talk. So we did that and it was wonderful.
Cute. That's so cute. I was thinking, I think I've done that modern day Zoom. My daughter has come up to me and she'll be like, can you just call, can you Zoom so-and-so? And then she'll just wants to take my phone and be like, hi, what you doing? And it's like, it's happened maybe once or twice. And I'm like, you're going to see this person at school tomorrow. And she's just like, no, I just want to say something real quick. And I'm like, this is not like the days, but so what I've done with her though, what I have tried to do is successfully, we met a family this summer and she has got a pen pal and they write actual letters. Ooh. And we have her sit down and write the letter and post it to her pen pal who responds. Then we read the letter and they're 6, right? So it's super cute. It's like, how are you? I went to school today. What's your favorite animal? And then there's like glitter pen hearts and some drawings and then it's done. And I was just like, it's so adorable.
Where'd you get the inspiration for that?
I used to have endless pen pals when I was younger. So like, again, diplomat kid, you never live in one place for long enough. So you're always moving from here to there. And so you make friends and this is pre-internet really. So you swapped home addresses and you write letters. And I actually found a bunch of letters from a friend I had when I was 12 and they're like 20 letters from her. And this is going to sound so terrible, but I don't remember what she looked like. But I have all of our letters and they're hilarious.
You try to research.
And I'm imagining I've tried to look her up. I've tried to look up the school, but the school's changed names. And I'm like, isn't this wild? Because there are so many letters between us over the course of like a couple of years. And we were talking nonsense. It was literally probably a good reflection of what would be a text conversation between you and your friends today. But it was in long form. It was letters and it was, so many of them. So it was very cute. And I think having pen pals and having that practice is quite cute.
Did you ever do it? Pals. I didn't do pen pals, but I had other versions. So one thing I would do once in Indonesia, because it's a bit harder to like mail letters back and forth because you have to go through like the government post. But what we would do is some of my friends would have beepers. So what I would do is I would go to a payphone and I would call like a number, the beeper number, and I would send a message like, hey, do you want to go to the mall? And then I would hang up. And I would also put the number to the payphone and then I would hang up and I would wait for a call back from this friend. And it could be any amount of time. I would just wait. And I have like one specific friend in mind who I would like every day. We had the same routine. You would just think, hey, why don't we just meet at this place at this time every day? But no, the routine was first go to the payphone, make the call, wait for the return call. So then after, when things got more tech savvy, fax machines came out and this blew my mind. I was simply excited. So what I would do is I'd always find like business centers, whether it was like my dad's work, someone's work.
Yeah.
And I would find paper and I would write like, how are you doing? And I would fax it to my friend. And then they'd write me back, good. And you? I'm like, great. Day at school was great. What'd you do at school today? Fax. And we would continue non-stop. And we would just be in the business center cackling. Yeah. So much paper. Like just cackling, like writing like nonsense jokes. So it's almost like pen pals with short text bursts.
Yeah.
Via text. But
I mean, I guess the behavior's always been there. Everyone's always like, oh, kids these days. It's like the tech didn't help us, but we were just as ridiculous, just as inane conversation. If we'd had the medium, we would have used it for just the same amount of silliness. I'm still stuck by you standing at a payphone waiting to get a call back. I'm like, 5 minutes, an hour, like half an hour. What if they were busy? What?
Yeah, it was long. It was definitely longer. Probably about 30 minutes at times. Because patience. You never know where a person is. But like you're a kid, you're like, I want to do this thing, fixate it. So you're like, this person's gonna call me back right now. And they mostly did.
Contrast that with today's generation where somebody would be like, you're leaving me on red. It's been 10 minutes since I sent you a message and you haven't replied. And I can see the blue ticks and I can see this delivered. And it's like, yeah, the patience is just not there. To be honest, even in my big old age, I don't have the patience of that anymore. If I'm asking a real time thing, I want the real time.
I've become absolutely horrible at text messaging. Like just
oh yeah, that's true.
Horrible, absolutely horrible. It's like you're in the middle of something. You're like, oh yeah, I see it. I'm going to respond, and then it gets lost.
No,
just sucked into the ether.
Yeah, I can talk. I'm probably the same.
Yeah.
So,
but on back, more tech things.
I wanted more tech things. So let's talk today about the economy. Because, and this will be in the show notes. So yesterday I was listening to, one of the things I decided to do when we moved to North America was to pay attention to what happens in North America, which in Canada is funny because actually it's, I don't know, Canadians will come for me. It's kind of provincial. So, but anyway, I listened to New York Times daily podcast and I like the fact that they take one subject and they spend like 30 minutes. And they did a 30-minute episode on the economy and specifically this question of whether or not millennials agree with the fact that on paper, the economy is actually doing better. So it's like the economy is actually recovering, inflation's come down, unemployment is low, apparently confidence is coming back to the market. But millennials are like, for whom? Because I'm still broke and I'm still feeling it. And it made me reflect because I was like, yeah, and I still know a lot of people in tech who are laid off, who have not found work.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, where is this recovery in the economy? Because it's not in our world, right? And so it's just the interesting difference between like what the stats might say and what's actually happening to a particular age demographic or even a particular sector. It's like, what do you think?
It's different. I fully agree. I mean, I think about when I, being a millennial, when I first graduated from college, I think it was like, I'm not going to age myself, but, I think we just hit like 2008 was just about to come down.
Yeah.
Was it 2008?
The big crash, Lehman Brothers. Yeah. It was 2008. Yeah.
It was a couple years out of college. That big crash happened. I feel like everyone who is around this time has massive student loans. If they've been lucky enough to get a house, like that has been like a big hurdle / hill to climb.
Yeah.
They have like loans, like there's a lot of cost.
Yeah.
And the price of things hasn't been cheap. And so when we go to look for work, we're like, okay, we have to be able to not only afford the foundation of things, but we want to even maybe dream about, leaving something behind in the future for our families.
Yeah.
If we've been privileged enough to like afford to support a family meaningfully.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a lot of, not pressure, but there's a lot that people have to take into account when they're trying to like dream big and go after some tech jobs. And then you look at the tech jobs and I'm sure you have a lot of friends who are like, hey, I'm in the market or I'm looking for roles, but nothing is really either I'm seeing a bunch of jobs listed. They're not really calling me after applying.
Yeah.
Or I do the interviews, I'm not hearing back. And so you're like, okay, are the jobs actually there? Are people like fishing? What's going on? There's layoff.
Yeah. Well, so I think there's a couple of things going on. So I mean, we've already discussed like layoff season, and everybody caught the bug of I did layoffs, so let's do layoffs, and it's a good thing to do layoffs. It's a good signal. So I think I think that's still going on. I think people are still like cutting, and it's not making the news anymore. So tech is leaner. The tech well, my hypothesis, I don't have data, so please don't come for me, is that tech industry is leaner now than it maybe was at any point in the last 3-4 years. And then when I consider how long people are going without getting hired, and so like at this stage of my career, a lot of my peers are like fairly senior, and a senior role takes a long time anyway. Like if you choose to leave a job without another job and you're super senior, like director level or whatever, you're probably waiting 6 months to find the right fit. But now I'm like, it's that plus the fact that companies are also not looking for as many people. I did like just check into my LinkedIn inbox because, you know, I'm scared of that. We've discussed it. But I actually have more messages from people than I do from recruiters in the last few months.
Yes, which is so interesting because it's normally not the case.
It's the opposite. I'm like looking for people I know out and trying to screen out the noise of like, hey, there's a role. I mean, there's a couple of pieces in there, but there's nothing in comparison to what it was like maybe 6 months ago. And so I'm like, it's very interesting to have, you know, people talk about, oh, inflation's coming down, yay, and like confidence and spend. And I'm like, but I would love to know who feels that confidence. Because I don't think it's tech. I don't think it's banking. Like, which industry actually feels that like that economic confidence has come back? Because it's actually not very clear to me. And this could just be that it's outside of my community and circles. But yeah.
We should put that out as a prompt. I am curious, you know, thinking about it. For companies, are they feeling a squeeze? Do you think companies are feeling a squeeze right now? And are they acting on that squeeze, or are they trying to proactively prevent?
Well, so this is the thing. So if you look at the FANG, and I mean, I know they're not FANG anymore, they're MANG or whatever, Q3 earnings, almost all of them blew expectations out of water.
Yes.
Right. And so other than I think Google missed the mark and then had a whole, or was it Q2 that they had that? Anyway, Google had a thing. But outside of that, almost all of the others were like, boom times are back. And there's a question is like, is that because your cost base went down or because you sold more? I don't know. Because almost all of you got rid of a whole ton of people.
But they probably also have a bit of PTSD, I'm sure, because during COVID, people were like, at first there was this fear of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. So we need to do layoffs to offload and ensure that we can make it through whatever time we're about to go through. And then we got into COVID and people are like, oh, people are spending money. This is great. We should hire. And they bloated the companies with people.
Yeah.
Right. And then we got into the last year or so where people are like, oh man, this wasn't a good idea. We need to cut our costs. We need to reduce people. And we saw people pointing to COVID times and saying, hey, we made bad decisions. We should have done X. We shouldn't have done Y. Therefore, we're going to have to cut X number of people. And we saw X number of roles, not X, but a lot of roles being eliminated through to this day. And so as companies report in Q4 to say, hey, we boom times, things look great. I'm curious if those lessons learned are the things now that's preventing them from wanting to be as ambitious, not as ambitious, but as expansive in their hiring because they know we would have to cycle through this again if we do the same thing.
It's so funny because I have always had a philosophy of being as lean as I possibly can in the way that I run my teams, to the point where in one of my recent jobs in the last few years, I got pulled over the coals by like ops, HR, and my like boss because
pulled over the coals.
What's the saying? Raked over the coals.
Raked over the
there
coals.
You go.
But still, what an image! Oh my gosh.
But yeah, they literally came for me, and they all came for me because on paper, my team was too lean for the proportion of resources that existed in engineering. And they were saying that like they'd had feedback that there weren't enough resources and that my team was always too busy and they couldn't get enough throughput. And I was like, I disagree. And I was like, I disagree because I actually think we should be prioritizing. These people would like my team to solve problems that they could probably solve themselves. And this area doesn't need one of my people. They just need to grow the F up. And so I kind of had this back and forth where I refused to scale because I was like, I don't think it makes sense. And in hindsight, I was right. And I think like I've always held that line. Part of being like, and I'm going a bit off topic, but it's almost one of those things. It's like, you know how like the value of having a budget is to force you to choose what matters, because the moment you can buy everything, you don't really make any decisions, right? And so like the same thing applies at work. Yeah, it's like decide that you have 10 things to do, but you can only afford to do 5. So you pick the 5 most important things.
Most important.
But the other side of that is because these people's livelihoods. And if you just say, here's a job, one for you, you can have one, and then suddenly you have to change, you are totally messing with people's lives and their careers and their development all the time. That's what we
see, right?
Yeah. And that's where we are right now, is that people are like, it's taken me ages to find work. And I'm getting interviews and I'm not getting the call back. I'm doing this, I'm not getting, and it's like, this market is tough. And I don't know that we've recovered from anything, quite frankly.
I wonder then is for the roles, so there are still a number of jobs that are up. I am curious for the ones that are up, if there's actually an intention to hire for those roles.
Well,
or if it's just continue to keep them, keep the word about them going.
Well, so I have a theory about that, because I was talking to a friend of mine who's been looking for 6 months recently, and he said he consistently gets interviews and consistently gets ghosted after the interview. And so to him, he was like, let me go figure out if I'm doing something wrong or whatever. And I think where like maybe 3 years ago, employers or even recruiters who themselves have been laid off in vast swathes would be willing to take a risk on someone with high potential. Now they want to hire perfect. Now they want to hire like, is this the best? It's like, it's like exactly 100%. It's like this idea that you cannot mishire. The stakes are too high. And I think because of that, there's probably a sense that like roles are taking a really long time to fill inside companies. And like, I need to make a hire next year. And I'm paranoid because I'm like, I want to go hire in a very specific way. But at the same time, I have one role. I have one. And so it's like, how do I nail this? How do I get this right? How do I make sure that I'm like on it? And it's a weird time to be in that position. And I think the people who are losing out the most are probably junior folks with less experience. Because how do you get into a market where the only jobs available are going to the people with way more experience than you, and you're just then not gaining any experience in the meantime?
Yeah, I think people used to point to startups or smaller companies for that initial experience to get your feet wet, your hands dirty, whatever it's called. But even that now, startups are built different.
They are built different.
Like it's not luxury times where everyone's trying to fund every idea coming out the door. And so they have to work to validate their idea and then get people interested. And so therefore their teams are leaner. Yeah. They're probably going to bring on more senior people. Yeah. Where does I mean, it's probably for another time, but I think it's like interesting for us to think about, if you are junior, what are the paths for you to get experience such that you are a good fit for hiring?
Yeah. And do you know what? There's a world where everything we're describing is actually a good thing, right? In that, if you were to say what is good business practice, if you are a publicly listed company, you would want to make sure that every dollar you spend is carefully considered, and therefore every hire is carefully considered, and every decision is taken slowly to make sure that you're making better quality decisions. Therefore, you being lean is an outcome of a very intentional strategy to be here for the long run. Shareholders are like, yes, I love that. Or as an employee, you know when you're hired, you're right for that job. And you're like, you're being brought in very carefully and they love you and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But because of the junior side of things, it's then like, how do people gain experience? How do people learn? And I'm like, you have to invent your own projects again. You have to start your side hustle and make your own business. And fair enough, it's not the job it's not the way you want to work. And not everybody's going to be like a gazillionaire because they opened some kind of business. But you end up with the problem of, how do you show that you can solve problems? How do you show that you can navigate challenges? You've got to make your own. And I think that's also not a bad thing in the grand scheme of things, because again, if there's one thing I really appreciated at the shared employer that we all have in our history, is there was an underlying current here of really understanding what it takes to start and run a business, making you much more accountable for all the decisions you make on a daily basis within your job. And I think for a junior person, there's like some stuff like, learning your craft and being in tons of different situations around your craft that you definitely want. But actually what typically denotes a more experienced person from a more junior person is frameworks for decision making when shit hits the fan. And even if you invented those situations yourself, even if it was just to run your own business, like credibly saying, this is where I started, what I did and what I had to do and blah, like that shows somebody that you've developed the frameworks for making decisions.
Some seasoning.
There's some seasoning in there.
Yeah. So, because employers are like, okay, if I bring on a more junior person, then I'm going to have someone to support them, someone who's got to mentor them, someone's going to have to like check their work. And that means that person is going to be split timing that and whatever else. And is that a good use of that person's time? Or do I hire the more senior person? They are autonomous. They can go make,
Experience is just judgment. That's all you're being hired for, is good judgment. The quality is having good taste in good decision making. And that's all experience is ever looking for. And there is a world where you just have to put yourself in as many of those situations as you can and develop the judgment by force, because no one's giving it to you for free. So start that side
and good
hustle.
Is subjective, right? Because you really, I think you have to be very strategic about how you're building your own experience. So if you look out and say, hey, I want to work for X type of company or in X area, whatever it is, like being very intentional about the type of experience you're going out and building for yourself, because all jobs are not created equally. All product roles, all UX roles, all engineering, they're not all the same. You're going to be solving for different problems. And so you have to really think about, like, what am I uniquely interested or able to solve for? And then diving deeper into whatever skill set you have. And then when you get a role, you can kind of branch into whatever curiosities you have. But I think having something that your employer can say, oh, I see what you can uniquely do for me, because you have to stand out.
You've got to stand out
to whenever who you're interviewing with. And so you can't just say like, oh yeah, I'm good. And you're like, okay, at what? It's so interesting.
It's going to be, I think good luck to folks out there who are looking in this economy. I definitely think I'm not buying the hype that things are recovering and everything is peachy. The reality around me is just not validating that. But
maybe for a different group.
Yeah, I'd love to know who feels this confidence. Who are these consumers who are like, yeah, let's go splash out because, the economy's back. I don't know who they are. And so potentially, we could be looking at the other side. It's actually like, this is a very narrow blip and the real shit's going to hit the fan the next quarter results. I heard from a friend today that like, I need to pay attention to Europe again, but like Germany, which has typically been like the strongest economy in Europe, they're looking like they're looking at a huge budget deficit, the biggest they've ever had.
Really?
And if Germany struggles, the whole of Europe feels it.
What's the come.
Yeah. So then it's like, okay, so maybe we're just in a holding pattern. And, you know, there's more to come that's going to affect jobs and incomes and whatnot. But yeah, let's see. There's definitely bad vibes though, I say.
Oh, I agree. I plus one it. I feel like once we feel people coming in with like, oh yeah, well, is that an indicator when people get jobs more quickly?
It's a trailing indicator or a leading. Is it a leading indicator? I don't know. One of the two. I mean, because I guess hiring means you've got financial confidence. So the money's got to come in first, and then the hiring, is the confidence. So it's kind of, I think it's a bit of a trailing indicator.
Trailing, yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see soon.
Well, indeed. We've made this show for you, and we want to hear your stories. We have our combined 35 years experience in tech. We have an incredible bank of experts to call on. We are your safe space. So send us your tech challenges and we'll help you create some draft decisions through some real talk.
You've been listening to me, Mamuna Oladipo.
And me, Oyelayo-Pearson.
Edited and produced by me, Michael Bussa, with theme music by 031 Mash.
Email us at help@lostintechpodcast.com or DM us at lostintechpod.